Hi, this is Janet, and this is the story of my hobby, which was in the month of November. I restored this vintage secretary, which is a desk with the drop down table. I saw it advertised on Facebook garage sale, brought it home, washed it really, really well with water and TSP. I washed the inside and the outside, and it was, remember, November, so it was really cold outside. But I made sure that it would be scrubbed down well and removed the inside of it, which was this. It's a lovely little file organizing thing, and used that citrus strip, which supposedly is more environmental friendly than the stuff I had been using. You give it a little bit of time to work, and after about 15 minutes, it bubbles up like this. And then you scrape off that stuff with the knife or a 5-in-1 tool, which I'm using here. And then with steel wool, I just wiped off the excess. You can see that it took off the upper layer, but there was still a lot of factory baked in stuff that it didn't pull off. So I had to repeat this step a couple of times before I started the sanding process. I used a hand tool attached to my Milwaukee drill. It's a 180 grit sandpaper. Still, I needed to get out the sanding blocks and then just do some detail work with some sandpaper to get all of it off and clean. After this, I washed it in like a vinegar and water mixture. The hardest work was the top. The drop down of the secretary was not functional. All of its parts had broken, and the sides of it were coming apart, splintering. I removed the splintering parts and commenced to sanding off a lot of layers of paint and kind of a cheap varnish. It took a while. I started the process of building it back up with wood putty. Once I started sanding, I realized the wood putty wasn't going to be enough. So I started to mix some glue and a little bit of other materials to make sure that it had a nice synthetic finish, mimicking wood, but I knew that I wasn't going to be able to stain it properly now. This part will never absorb the stain the same way that the wood does. I tried to vacuum up all of the dust. When I started sanding the actual piece, after it had dried a while, I realized that the sanders that I had been working with were not going to do the job that I needed. It was going to be either days of hand sanding, or I could call in a favor of my wonderful husband and ask him if I could go and buy a proper sander to really get into this project. and other projects like it. And he said yes. So this is my early Christmas present. The DeWalt sander did not come with a sanding bag, and I just had to work with a lot of dust for the next couple days. I researched buying a sanding bag, but apparently after careful sanding, you can see that it's pulling up years of bad finish and then the factory seal. So apparently this is a knockoff of a Chippendale that the secretaries were very popular at the turn of the 1900s. You can see the old factory stain and then the new. Someone had tried to refinish it with, didn't really pay attention to detail. I'll have to work on that with hand sanding. It's pretty badly stained. I got to see that if I was going to be working with it and get it down to its original condition, it would mean a lot of hand sanding. The back I wasn't going to pay much attention to because it does have that insert and no one would ever see the back. These are the drawers after they've been sanded. They were lovely. One night when it was really cold, I decided to stay inside and binge watch Sister Wives and take care of these brass-looking fixtures. They're not real brass, they're brass finish. So you'll be able to see that with vinegar and kosher salt and water and a wire brush, I was able to get off years of tarnish. You have to be really careful or else you'll scrape it down to almost tin looking. You want to keep that finish as much as you can. Now is the old one. And here is the new one. It's pretty. Even though it's not real brass, it still is pretty. There were 4 of those. And then there was 8 drawer handles. So doing the drawer handles meant the same kind of time spent on the nooks and crannies of those drawer handles. Again, using the mixture of kosher salt, vinegar, and water. Original, that's what I inherited. You can see they're quite lovely already. And there's the restored. Again, they're not real brass, but they look well enough. Okay, more sanding. I have not gotten the message that I shouldn't be using this bag. I'm working on stubbornness for 2024. The sides were another issue. These sides, of course, are veneer, and it showed some distress. I had to make a decision of whether I was going to remove the ball and claw feet and also spend a lot of time restoring those legs, which I really don't have the skill to do. So I decided to basically wash them up and ignore them. Even the broken foot. It still was more sturdy than any other thing that's created today. Here, I'm sparing you all of the sanding. Here's the finished product after it's been sanded. This is after days of sanding, and again, I decided not to restore the bottom. So I will wash it as well as I can, and then just add another coat of matching stain. Everything is now ready for a finish. The insert is not made out of mahogany, which is what the rest of the wood is. It's made out of a kind of a pineish, balsamy thing. I decided to use a water-based stain. It was really cold that night, and I did this inside in my kitchen, as you can tell. That is not my open water bottle in the background. It's your imagination. If you're a professional restorer, look away. The water-based stain is easy to work with, and I had brought back this mahogany water-based stain from South Africa. So it's over 10 years old. It still was good, had a good texture. And I was pretty satisfied with the way that it looked that first night. I used a sponge tip brush. The absorption, once I started painting, I could see that it was not absorbing this stain evenly. And I thought probably it was because it was a water-based stain. I had not diluted it, so I had to keep going back over it, hoping that it would just suddenly decide to absorb it. And it was a little discouraging. I spent a lot of time with the preparation and then afterwards washing it down. And it still did not really absorb the stain as evenly as I wanted it to. I kept doing it because really I had no other choice. The water-based stain says that it was also a seal. I was pretty sure that it was not going to be. After that, I decided to apply this. It's a wood stain that is oil-based. We're now outside and Mario is recording me. The stain that I had bought is a stain called Cabernet. They had no mahogany stain. And because it is a wiping stain, I was going to see, this little door goes inside of this insert. And because it is solid wood, I thought it would be a good tale of how the rest of the dresser would absorb the wood stain, the wiping stain. So what you do is put on a coat, allow it to absorb for about a couple, 5 minutes, And then you can wipe off. And see how it looks. And you take a rag and wipe it clean. And I'm pretty satisfied with the finish. As you can see, it paints on red, but comes off wood-looking, mahogany-ish. I went over the whole insert again, hoping that the oil-based stain would absorb a little bit better, or at least stain what did not absorb. And it ended up working really well. I really liked working with this product. It's a lot easier to work with than I thought it would be. Instead of using a sponge tip applicator, I used a small brush just to make sure that I would get even distribution into the whole insert. And at the same time that I wouldn't overdo it. Once I was satisfied that it was covered, I decided to do the painting and wiping again. And like I said, I was really grateful that it had given it a more even finish. I did 2 drawers at a time. I really love these drawers. This is veneer, but it is a really good, very well. I loved these drawers. The veneer went on very well. And I had a little trip there that I had to sand off later. The drop-down desk cover, this is how it absorbed the stain. As you can see, the wood putty combination, it doesn't look at all like wood. I knew that I would have to paint. I had a dark burgundy paint, and I tried to measure off where I would start and stop so that it would look like a finish rather than, oh, I just had to paint this. And the actual paint that went on is a water-based paint. It went very well on top of that oil-based stain and on top of the wood putty glue combination. Later, I will remove the iron attachment here. I'm trying to figure out how to add this drop-down top to the secretary. I couldn't find out how to do it. On a cold night, Mario and I decided to screw in that insert, and the results were just glorious. I really was happy with the way this piece looked. As you can see, there's still places that didn't absorb the stain evenly. But, like I suspected, the bottom doesn't look too awfully different. And I don't think many people will notice those beautiful ball and claw feet as, as much as they will the rest of the body. My daughter gave me that painting. I loved it. I loved the way that it came out. There was still one problem, and that was this beautiful piece was still incomplete without that drop-down desktop. Oh, I love the way those came out. I even found keys for those locks. So these are the pictures of the desk without the top, and you can see the transformation. So, meanwhile, back at the top, because it required so much extra care, I gave it a couple of extra coats of the top coat, which is a polyurethane. And then finally decided to add very dainty hinges. They are so small that they are called jewelry box hinges. But because of these support slats under the drop-down desk, I was able to add them with a lot bit more precision than I deserved. This was probably one of the hardest parts of the restoration, was deciding how to add that. I'm chewing gum. Not good look in the time lapse. The little screws that added these on kind of ensured that the wood wouldn't be too awfully damaged. I'm just making sure that it's going to line up. There's a little lock at the very top, and the drop-down lid will be secure. Mario's in the next room praying that this will work. This would be the end of a very long project. The screws were so tiny they kept slipping out of the... one more to go. I'm using the same screwdriver I used to tighten my eyeglasses. And we're going to see, boom, victory dance. And this is what it looks like, the finished product. Oh, I was in love with it. Look at the drop-down desk will come down, and it will be supported by the slats. But the jewelry box hinges were a good choice. They matched the look of the rest of the dresser. And the key works. The lock lined up. Slats come out. And when you drop the desk down, the hinges do hold it in place and make sure that it lines up, but the actual desk is supported by the slats. You can see that there's not a lot of matching in the drop-down top and the actual wood. I just think it's the difference between the solid wood versus the veneer. The actual piece is solid wood, and the drop-down desk has a veneer on it. And I loved how this came out. In total, it took me about 2 weeks. And I hope that it shows all the love and care and prayer that went into it. I will use it every day. Okay, here's the before and after pictures coming up. Thanks for watching.